You stand at the edge of a dying world. The wind that brushes your face carries the scent of salt, stone, and incense, the breath of a city that once called itself eternal. Constantinople, the queen of cities, lies before you, bathed in a light that no longer belongs to day, nor yet to night. The sun dips low over the Bosphorus, and the sky itself seems to hesitate, as though mourning what it is about to lose. You hear the bells first. They toll slowly, not in triumph or terror, but with the weary grace of something that has known too much beauty to fear its end. Their echoes roll across the marble domes and cracked courtyards, through the tangled streets where ivy crawls over faded mosaics and broken fountains whisper to no one. You walk those streets in silence, your footsteps merging with the centuries, every echo a memory, every shadow a ghost. In the great cathedral of Hagia Sophia, candles tremble beneath a dome that once held the sky. The golden icons shimmer like dying stars, their faces soft and human, their eyes filled with something beyond sorrow, something closer to acceptance. A priest kneels alone at the altar, his voice a thread of prayer woven through the vastness. He does not ask for victory. He asks that the city be remembered kindly by God. Outside, the sea sighs against the harbour walls, and ships drift like dark thoughts upon its silver surface. On the horizon, the Ottoman banners ripple in the evening wind. Drums beat faintly across the water, not yet war, but the heartbeat of destiny drawing closer with every wave. You can feel it, can't you? That soft trembling in the air, the moment before a page of history turns. You pass through the old markets, now silent, where spices once painted the air with colour. Here an old man locks the door of his shop one last time. He touches the wood, as if it were the face of a friend. There, a child watches the horizon, not understanding why the adults are whispering, only sensing that something enormous is happening, something too big to name. The night deepens. Above you the stars appear one by one, patient witnesses to all the empires that have risen and fallen beneath their gaze. Somewhere beyond those stars, perhaps, the soul of Byzantium prepares to join them, and still the city breathes. You can hear it, in the rustle of banners, in the murmur of the sea, in the hush of prayers that drift upward like smoke. Constantinople is dying not in screams but in whispers, and you are here to remember it. You move toward the walls, Theodosius's mighty fortifications, once thought unbreakable. The stones are cold beneath your hand, yet alive with the memory of centuries. You imagine the soldiers who stood here before you, men who believed their walls would hold forever. Now they watch the horizon, torches flickering in their eyes, courage trembling with faith. They do not know that dawn will bring an ending the world will never forget. Somewhere beyond the campfires, an empire waits to be born. But here, within these fading walls, another takes its final breath. And yet, endings are never as final as they seem. The night settles deeper. The city glows faintly, as if lit from within, but not by fire, but by memory. It is said that even at its fall, Constantinople remained beautiful, as though determined to die with grace. You walk through its final hours, and it feels less like destruction, more like surrender. A release, not a defeat. You reach the sea once more, where the moonlight paints silver paths across the waves. You follow them with your eyes, tracing the line where east meets west, where one age ends and another begins. Perhaps that is where destiny waits, quiet, patient, watching as civilizations trade places like actors in a play that never truly ends. You close your eyes and you can almost hear the whisper of the next world rising, a world that will carry the memory of this one in its blood. The wind shifts. Somewhere in the darkness the drums return, slow, steady, inevitable. The sound feels less like conquest now, more like a heartbeat resuming after a long sleep. And you know, though you cannot say how, that history is not dying here. It is only changing form. As you step away from the walls, the bells toll one last time. The sound fades into the night, swallowed by the sea, carried eastward on the wind. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the first dreams of a new empire are already stirring, soft as breath, bright as dawn. And as you listen to that rhythm, that ancient, endless rhythm, you realize something beautiful. Every ending, if you listen closely enough, sounds like the beginning of a song, If you've felt this echo of time stir something within you, stay with this journey. There's more to come and more to remember. No rush, no pressure. Just breathe and drift with history. The night stretches wide above the Anatolian plains. You stand beneath a sky so vast it feels endless, a dome of indigo scattered with silver fire. Every star seems close enough to touch, and the air hums with the quiet song of crickets and distant wind. Somewhere out there beyond the horizon, Constantinople sleeps in the memory of its own fall. But here in the silence between mountains and steppe, another story has just begun to breathe. You walk among the campfires. They flicker gently in the wind, small circles of warmth surrounded by the immensity of darkness. The tents sway like ghostly sails, and the smell of smoke and roasted grain mingles with the scent of pine. Men speak in low voices, women weave by lantern light, their hands moving in rhythm with songs older than the empires that once claimed this land. The world feels young again, stripped of marble, clothed in dust and faith. In the center of the camp sits a man whose eyes are half closed, as if he is listening to something no one else can hear. His name is Osman, son of Ertugrul, a leader of a people who own little but the sky above them and the stories they carry within. He is not a king, not yet, only a chieftain with a vision that glimmers like the faintest star on the horizon. Tonight, that vision comes to him in a dream. You see it unfold with him, a tree rising from his heart, its roots sinking deep into the soil of Anatolia, its branches stretching over seas and mountains, covering lands where tongues and faiths intertwine. From those branches hang the symbols of power and peace, banners fluttering in the celestial wind. It is not a dream of conquest. It is a dream of continuity, that life might flow again through lands left silent by war. He wakes before dawn, the fire beside him reduced to a thin red glow. The dream still clings to him like the scent of smoke, and for a long while he says nothing. You watch him step out into the chill air, his gaze lifting toward the faint shimmer of the morning star. Somewhere in its light he finds resolve. Around him the camp stirs. Horses snort softly, breath blooming in clouds of white. A muezzin's voice rises over the plain, gentle, unhurried, and the sound rolls through the valleys like water finding its path. The people kneel upon the earth, and in their silence you sense a power that does not need walls or crowns to endure. As the sun rises, the landscape reveals itself. Rolling hills stitched with olive trees, rivers that gleam like threads of glass, ruins half swallowed by grass where empires once stood proud. You trace the outlines of broken columns, the remains of forgotten churches, the bones of fortresses lost to time, and yet the land feels alive, nourished by everything that came before. Osman rides out ahead. The rhythm of hooves against soil sounds like the drumbeat of destiny, soft but steady. He pauses by an old Byzantine watchtower, now only a crumbling frame against the sky. He looks at it not with scorn, but curiosity, as if he sees in its ruins a foundation for something new. Perhaps he knows that every civilization leaves behind more than stones. It leaves a language of spirit, waiting to be spoken again. You follow as his small band moves through the hills. Each village they pass welcomes them not with fear, but with cautious hope. They trade bread, water, words. Old monks and scholars share tales of Rome, of prophets, of lost wisdom. And Osman listens, always listens, as though every voice, even those from another faith, might carry a piece of the truth he seeks. By nightfall, the plains are washed in silver again. You lie beside the campfire, staring upward. The stars seem closer now, as if leaning down to watch the dream taking shape below. Osman sits nearby, silent once more, tracing patterns in the dirt, plans perhaps, or prayers. His men speak quietly of a future they can barely imagine, a realm of justice, of unity, of peace. Their laughter is soft, their faith unshakable. And as the flames dance, you feel the story expand. No longer just his, but the land's, the people's, humanity's endless yearning for meaning. From the ashes of Byzantium's grandeur, something humbler is growing, a dream rooted not in power but in purpose. The wind carries the scent of rain and wild thyme. It whispers through the grass, over the tents, across the sleeping faces of the tribe. You close your eyes and hear it murmur the same word again and again, tomorrow. When you open them, dawn is breaking. The horizon blushes gold, and Osman mounts his horse. The first light of morning catches the edge of his blade, not raised for battle, but held like a mirror to the sky. The world ahead is vast, uncertain, but filled with promise. And for a brief moment, you understand what he saw in his dream, that even after the darkest night, the earth remembers how to bloom. You breathe in the cool air, the scent of new beginnings. The stars fade one by one, retreating into the pale sky, but you know they are still there, hidden, waiting, just as the dream remains, alive beneath the surface of waking life. And as you drift in that quiet between memory and dawn, you hear again the soft rhythm of hooves fading into the distance, the beginning of a journey that will change the world. The night was still yet alive with whispers. You could almost hear them in the wind, a murmur carried from mountain to valley, from tent to prayer rug, from one restless heart to another. The moon hung low, curved like a blade, yet gentle as a mother's hand. Beneath its pale light, shadows stretched across the Anatolian plains, where the young empire began to breathe. You walked among them, men and women who had nothing but faith, horses, and dreams. The fires burned small, flickering against the dark like tiny souls refusing to fade. Every crackle of flame felt like a promise whispered to the sky, "Our time will come." The Byzantines, far away in their marble halls, still clung to what was left of empire. Their candles trembled on gilded altars, their hymns echoed through half-empty cathedrals. But power, true power, had already shifted. It no longer lived behind walls or crowns. It had taken root in hearts that knew hunger, in voices that still prayed beneath open skies. You could feel that change like a pulse beneath the soil, slow, certain, sacred. Somewhere in a tent not far from here, Osman's son Orhan sat listening to an old dervish tell stories by the fire. The man's eyes gleamed like embers as he spoke of destiny, of a moon rising from a shepherd's dream and wrapping the world in its light. Around him silence gathered, reverent and deep, and though Orhan said nothing, his heart burned quietly with the weight of those words. History, you realize, never announces itself with thunder. It begins softly, in half-remembered prophecies, in the rustle of canvas at night, in the slow turning of a mind toward faith. The Ottomans did not conquer the world by storm. They listened first, to the land, to each other, to the whispers that seemed to drift from the stars themselves. Days melted into one another, each carrying a rhythm of its own, the rhythm of hooves, of hammer against steel, of prayer breaking through dawn. Villages rose where tents once stood. Markets began to hum with new tongues, new trades. There was laughter again, not of victory, but of belonging. You wander through these growing towns, hearing the melody of their language, a blend of Turkic breath, Persian grace, and Arabic devotion. It rolls gently from tongue to tongue, like a song that remembers many homes. Children run barefoot through dust, chasing shadows of kites shaped like crescent moons. Women draw water at dawn, their bracelets chiming like distant bells. Every sound feels alive, part of a symphony the world is only beginning to hear, and above it all the crescent keeps rising. One night, a storm rolled over the plains, lightning traced silver veins across the sky, and the wind carried the scent of rain and iron. You stood beneath the storm, watching men secure their tents while the muezzin's call pierced the thunder. There was no fear in them, only calm, as though they knew the storm itself was a guest in their house. Through the downpour, you saw something remarkable, a banner fluttering defiantly against the wind, its fabric soaked but unyielding. The crescent on its face glimmered faintly with every flash of lightning, and in that light you felt it, the soul of a people rising not from conquest, but from patience. When dawn came, the storm was gone. The earth smelled of rain and promise. You could almost hear the grass breathing, the rivers singing. The camps stirred awake, and with them a new certainty that the road ahead belonged to them. As decades passed, the crescent's light grew stronger. From the hills of Bilecik to the valleys of Sakarya, fortresses fell, not to fury, but to time and strategy. The Ottomans moved like water, slow, adaptable, unstoppable. Villages welcomed them not with fear but relief. Justice followed their footsteps, as did builders, scholars, and traders. The empire was being woven quietly, one thread at a time. You drift through these early conquests, through narrow mountain passes where soldiers whisper prayers before battle, through empty fortresses where the scent of candle wax lingers long after the fight is done. There is no cruelty in these scenes, only purpose. Even the vanquished seem to sense it, that they are witnessing not an ending, but the beginning of something vast and inevitable. The crescent has risen not as a weapon, but as a guide. By the shores of the Marmara, a breeze carries the mingled fragrances of salt and cedar. You stand at the edge of a small port where ships bob gently, their hulls painted with fresh symbols, the mark of Osman's lineage. Traders from distant lands arrive with silk, spices, and news of the world beyond. Some speak of the weakening empire to the west, others of kingdoms divided by greed, and always their voices lower when they speak of the Turks, as if naming something sacred, still in the making. You listen, and in their murmurs, you hear both fear and fascination. For the world has always feared what it does not yet understand, and destiny, when it first begins to take shape, is often mistaken for a shadow. As night falls again, you return to the campfire. The same dervish sits there, now older, his beard like frost beneath the stars. He hums an old verse, one that drifts between languages, carrying no name, yet belonging to everyone. Around him the young listen just as Osman once did. Their eyes reflect the flames, their faces calm. They do not yet know what their future will demand of them, only that it is coming. You feel the same pull, a quiet ache, a calling that stirs somewhere deep within. Perhaps that is what history truly is, not the memory of what has been, but the echo of what still longs to be born. Above, the crescent glows brighter, silver against indigo. The stars gather around it like disciples circling a teacher. The wind softens, carrying the scent of earth newly washed by rain. And for a moment everything, the land, the people, even the silence, feels in perfect harmony. The Byzantines still dream within their fading walls, their mosaics glitter in candlelight, unaware that time has already chosen another heir. But you know, you can feel it. The heartbeat beneath the soil has become a drumbeat now, slow, sure, eternal. The crescent has risen, and though the world sleeps, it will soon awaken to its light. The night sighs, the stars listen, and destiny hums like a prayer beneath your feet, soft, ancient, and alive. You awaken to the scent of cedar and steel. The morning air is cool, almost sacred, and the horizon glows like an ember slowly catching fire. From the distant ridges of Mount Uludağ, fog rolls gently into the valley, veiling the city that waits below. Bursa, a jewel sleeping at the edge of history. You stand upon a hillside where the Ottoman banners sway like ripples of night itself. Their crescents shimmer faintly against the dawn, wet with dew and promise. Around you, soldiers whisper their prayers, voices low, steady, woven together by faith. The sound feels less like preparation for battle and more like a sacred ritual, an offering before the birth of destiny. Somewhere in the hush, a single voice rises. It's the Imam, his tone clear and tender, as he blesses the morning. The echo stretches across the plain, mingling with the first cries of sparrows. For a moment everything, and the men, the wind, the trembling earth, pauses. Then the world exhales, and history begins to move again. The siege of Bursa had lasted for years. A patient war fought not with fury, but with endurance. The Byzantines within the walls had grown weary, food had become memory, and hope had turned into habit. Yet even in hunger, they clung to their towers, their bells tolling faintly across the hills like fading prayers. You walk among the Ottoman camps and feel something different in the air. There is no mockery of the fallen, no thirst for blood, only purpose. The soldiers carry not the arrogance of conquerors, but the calm of men certain of their path. Each step, each strike feels ordained, a movement guided by something older than ambition. Orhan, Osman's son, moves through the ranks quietly. His eyes reflect both fire and sorrow. He has seen the toll this siege has taken, on his people, on the land, even on his heart. Yet behind that solemn gaze burns a vision that refuses to die. He knows that this victory, when it comes, must not be born of destruction, but of rebirth. As the sun climbs higher, the mists thin. You catch your first glimpse of Bursa, its walls aged and weary, its towers gilded by a light too pure for war. Somewhere within, a church bell tolls again, slow and hollow. And then, at last, you hear it. The low rumble of drums rolling through the Ottoman lines, signaling the end of waiting. The assault begins. But it is not chaos you witness. It is rhythm. The archers move as one, their arrows whispering like rain. The ladders rise, shields glint. The air fills with the scent of smoke and sweat and faith. The city groans beneath the weight of its own history. You feel it, the struggle of an age giving way to another, the old resisting the inevitable. When the gates finally yield, the sound is not a roar, but a sigh. The people within do not scream. They watch, and what they see surprises them. The Ottomans do not pillage, they do not burn the churches or desecrate the icons. Orhan rides slowly through the streets, his banner trailing behind him like a quiet dawn. His first order is simple: protect the innocent, preserve the holy places, feed the hungry. The command spreads like sunlight through shadow. Soldiers dismount, offering bread where once they carried blades. Bursa falls, not in flame but in grace. Days later the city transforms. The markets reopen. Bells and calls to prayer ring together in a strange, beautiful harmony. Byzantine families return to their homes, greeted by guards who speak to them not as enemies, but as neighbors. The old city breathes again, not as Byzantium's outpost, but as the first heart of a new world. You wander through its streets as the sun dips behind the mountains. The marble glows faintly pink, the scent of jasmine drifts from hidden courtyards. In the distance you hear Orhan's men setting stones for a mosque, the first of many. Their laughter carries over the rooftops, mingling with the hum of evening life. There is peace here, but not the silence of exhaustion, the peace of beginnings. And as the stars bloom above, Bursa becomes more than a conquest. It becomes a promise. Night settles. A single flame burns atop the new citadel, the torch of Osman's lineage. It flickers in the wind, casting golden ripples over the city below. Orhan stands beside it, looking down at what his people have built. The dervish who once told stories by the campfire stands beside him, now older, his eyes glistening in the light. "You've done what your father dreamed," he whispers. Orhan shakes his head softly. "No," he says. "He dreamed of the world. I've only begun to build its doorway." They stand in silence for a while. The moon rises, curving like a smile above the hills. Below, the mosques hum with evening prayers, low, melodic, eternal. You can almost feel Osman's spirit there, somewhere in the wind, proud but humble, watching as the flame he lit now burns brighter than he ever imagined. Bursa's gardens bloom in the years that follow. Scholars arrive from Persia, traders from Arabia, artisans from every corner of Anatolia. The calligraphy on stone, the weave of silks, the laughter in the markets. Everything begins to blend, to harmonize. A civilization is being written here, line by line, color by color. And still the crescent rises. It gleams now not just in the night sky, but upon domes, coins, and hearts. It has become more than a symbol. It is an idea, one that carries within it the balance of power and mercy, ambition and humility, conquest and creation. You pause by the river that winds below the city. The water glows red with the reflection of the sunset, yet peaceful, like the memory of fire, not its presence. The air tastes of pomegranates and smoke. And somewhere nearby, a poet recites softly, "Empires are not born from victory, but from patience that outlasts despair." You listen to the words fade into the twilight, and you understand what the Ottomans had truly built here. Not just a kingdom, but a rhythm, one that would echo through centuries. As the night deepens, the torches along the city walls shimmer like constellations brought down to earth. The sound of distant prayers drifts through the air, mingled with the laughter of children chasing fireflies in the courtyards. Bursa sleeps, not in silence, but in peace. And as you close your eyes, you feel the warmth of those flames upon your skin, the first fires of an empire that will one day illuminate the world. You smile, knowing this is only the beginning, the calm before the next great tide of history. The night opens softly, a whisper of wind across the dunes. You are walking slowly through a world stitched together by footsteps and faith. Ahead, the road glimmers faintly under a crescent moon. The Silk Road, though few call it that now. To those who travel it, it is simply the way, the pulse of life between lands and centuries. You hear the muted hum of caravan bells, small and hollow, ringing in rhythm with the desert's breath. Each sound feels like a heartbeat of time itself, steady, eternal. Beside you, camels sway like slow-moving ships through a golden sea, their shadows stretching long under the moonlight. The air smells faintly of spice, cardamom, clove, and dust, and somewhere behind you a merchant hums a lullaby from a faraway land. Here, in this moment, the world feels borderless. Empires rise and fall, yet these roads endure, patient, unbroken, eternal. As dawn begins to bloom across the horizon, the colors shift from indigo to gold. You find yourself near a caravanserai, one of countless way stations built under Ottoman watch. Its walls are heavy with centuries of conversation. The gates open to reveal merchants from Damascus and Bursa, scholars from Samarkand, and travelers who have crossed half the earth for a handful of silk. Inside, the air is warm with the scent of baked bread and stories. A man from Aleppo tells of caravans lost in snow near Tabriz. Another speaks of a Persian weaver who dyed cloth with crushed lapis, turning fabric into liquid sky. And a woman, her voice low and luminous, tells of a city by the sea, Istanbul, where domes shimmer like planets at dawn and the call to prayer echoes through stone and sea. You listen, half dreaming. The words swirl together, forming pictures of distant places, gardens, minarets, bazaars where languages mingle like perfumes, and slowly you begin to realize this road is not just a path for trade, but a living conversation. Every traveler carries a piece of another world, a word, a song, a way of seeing. Every object traded holds within it a memory, silk that once brushed an empress's hand, or a prayer bead that traveled from a monk's temple to a Sufi's shrine. The Ottomans understood this. They did not merely build roads, they built bridges between hearts. Along the empire's veins they fostered safety, rest and hospitality. Caravanserais dotted the routes like stars across a map, offering warmth, water and a place to dream before the next day's long journey. You sit now beside a small fire. The flames flicker, painting the faces around you in amber light. Someone plucks at a rebab, its string humming like a sigh. You close your eyes and feel history breathing through you, the mingling of worlds, the pulse of humanity in motion. Beyond these walls the road stretches on, over Anatolia's green hills, across the Tigris plains, through Persia's mountain passes, and into the farthest reaches of Cathay. Goods pass hand to hand, silk for glass, spice for silver, wisdom for wonder. And through it all one truth endures, that the world was never divided, only distant. You picture the traders' maps, not drawn on parchment, but carved into memory. Each route, each pass, each resting place, remembered through stories and songs, and in those stories you can feel something stirring, the quiet birth of globalization long before the word existed. Later that night, as stars scatter over the desert like spilled salt, you wander outside. The air is cool, almost holy. A lone camel kneels in the sand, its breath rising in misty curls. You gaze eastward, where the horizon trembles faintly, as if remembering all the footsteps that have passed before you. The Silk Road was never only about silk. It was about exchange, of art, of thought, of soul. It carried not only goods but beliefs. Here the teachings of Islam met the philosophies of China. Buddhist scrolls traveled westward, and Sufi poetry found its way east. In the meeting of traders and mystics, something beautiful was born, a soft harmony between difference and understanding. Perhaps that is why the Ottomans guarded these paths so dearly. They knew that a nation's strength lay not just in armies or gold, but in connection, in the invisible threads that tie one heart to another across the distances of the world. You imagine a caravan setting out from Bursa, laden with silk and silver. It winds through the valleys, past vineyards and mosques, then merges with others bound from Aleppo and Tabriz. Together they move like a slow river of humanity, merchants, pilgrims, dreamers, all flowing toward the same endless horizon. Along the way, they speak in dozens of tongues. They trade not only objects, but stories. And when they part, they carry a little of each other. A shared memory, a fragment of song, a kindness offered by a stranger. Even the wind seems to remember their voices. It carries the laughter of children from distant towns, the whisper of prayers whispered under starlight, the sound of 1,000 footsteps blending into one. And as you listen, you begin to sense something eternal in all of this. The way humanity, despite its boundaries, has always reached for connection. The way every road, no matter how long, leads not only to another place, but to another soul. As dawn returns once more, you watch light spill across the desert. The horizon turns to rose, then gold, then blinding white, and you realize that this road, these roads of silk and shadow, are not lost. They live still, in every act of exchange, every bridge crossed between cultures, every quiet moment when two strangers share understanding without words. You turn to look back one last time. The caravanserai stands silent in the morning light, its gates open like the pages of a forgotten book. You can almost hear the echoes of footsteps fading, of languages blending, of the world breathing as one. And as you walk onward, the road unfolds again before you, endless, shimmering, alive. You follow it not for treasure, but for truth, the kind that hides in the spaces between journeys, in the silence between voices. Because somewhere beyond the next horizon, another city awaits, another story, another dream, and the wind whispers softly, "Keep walking." The road remembers. The night begins in silence. A soft wind moves through the empty streets of Constantinople, stirring the torn banners that hang from marble walls. You walk slowly, your footsteps echoing through an empire that once ruled the world. The stars above seem dimmer here, as though they too mourn the fading of something eternal. You can almost hear the ghosts of the city breathing. The distant hum of forgotten hymns drifts through broken archways, mingling with the scent of salt and candle wax. Somewhere, in a chapel whose doors no longer close, the faint glimmer of gold leaf still catches the light, the face of Christ, serene and sorrowful, watching over a people who no longer have the strength to hope. Constantinople is dying, but it dies beautifully. The streets are filled with shadows, monks, soldiers, merchants, all walking beneath a sky heavy with memory. You see a young boy kneeling beside the ruins of a statue, tracing its cold marble face as though trying to remember the shape of perfection. A woman lights a candle before a shattered icon, whispering a prayer not for victory, but for peace. Everywhere you look, the empire's grandeur lingers like perfume, faint, fragile, unforgettable. Centuries of pride weigh upon this place. Once, the city had been the crown of the world, a living jewel at the crossroads of continents. The gates of Theodosius had kept invaders at bay for 1,000 years. The domes of Hagia Sophia had touched heaven itself. But now the air feels heavy, like the final breath before an ending. And yet, even as its towers crumble, Constantinople refuses to bow. The emperor, Constantine V, walks the ramparts each morning, his cloak fluttering in the cold sea wind. His face is calm, though his eyes hold the reflection of a dying world. The Ottomans wait across the water, their banners rising like a tide of crimson and gold, but the emperor stands firm. He knows the city cannot be saved. Still he prays, not for survival, but for dignity. In the great palace few remain. The halls, once filled with laughter and diplomacy, now echo only with footsteps and whispers. You pass beneath mosaics that shimmer faintly in the candlelight, scenes of saints and emperors, of angels carrying swords of flame. Their colors are fading, yet their beauty defies decay. You pause before one figure, the Virgin Mary, her eyes wide and tender. Her gaze follows you, as though she too mourns the fate of the empire she once blessed. A question lingers in your mind. Can a civilization truly die, or does it simply transform into memory? Outside, the wind grows colder. The Bosphorus glitters under a thin moon, its surface rippling with silver light. Across the strait, Ottoman ships sway in the water, their lanterns glowing like embers on a black sea. You can almost hear the faint murmur of prayers in Turkish and Arabic rising softly into the night. The Ottomans watch with patience and perhaps with sorrow. They know this city is not merely a prize, but a soul. They feel the weight of history pressing down upon them, as though conquest itself demands reverence. You imagine Sultan Mehmed II, still young yet heavy with purpose, studying the skyline of Constantinople from his camp. The domes, the towers, the unbroken walls, all shimmering in moonlight like an illusion of eternity. Perhaps even he, in the quiet of night, wonders if one can truly conquer something so ancient, so sacred. Dawn arrives like a sigh. You find yourself standing before Hagia Sophia, its great dome veiled in shadow. Inside, the last priests move slowly through the aisles, their voices echoing through the vast, hollow air. The smell of incense still lingers, rising toward mosaics darkened by centuries of smoke. Each word of prayer sounds like a farewell. You close your eyes and listen to the rustle of robes, the clinking of chains, the low, trembling chant of a hymn that once filled empires. The sound is both beautiful and unbearable, and then for a moment you feel it, the pulse of the city itself. It beats weakly beneath your feet, like a heart that refuses to stop. Byzantium, the city of emperors, of saints, of scholars, still breathes. Its breath is thin, but it carries the weight of all who came before. Every brick, every stone, every ripple in the sea holds the echo of its story. As you walk again through its winding alleys, you notice the smallest things: a cracked fountain still flowing with water, a fig tree growing through broken marble, a fragment of mosaic glimmering like starlight beneath the dust. Life persists, quietly, stubbornly. Even in ruin there is renewal. You think of all the empires that came before, Egypt, Persia, Rome, each one burning bright, then fading into legend. And you realize that Byzantium's beauty lies not in its walls, but in its endurance through memory. It has survived not through might, but through meaning. As the evening sun descends, the city turns to gold once more. Its domes glow like embers in the twilight. From the distant hills, the faint sound of drums echoes, the rhythm of the approaching Ottoman army. Yet the people do not flee. They light candles in windows, as if to guide lost souls home. On the highest tower, the emperor prays alone. His voice is steady, his words carried by the wind. "Lord, into thy hands, I commit this city." You watch as he turns, facing the sea, his armor glinting softly in the last light of day. Around him the city seems to hold its breath, and for a fleeting moment it feels as though time itself stops. The wind stills, the sea hushes, the world listens. Byzantium, proud and eternal, offers its final lament, not a cry of defeat, but a song of remembrance. Night returns, gentle and deep. You walk once more through the empty streets, now bathed in silver light. The city is quiet but not dead. The walls hum faintly with centuries of prayer. The air feels heavy with unspoken promises. From somewhere far off, the call of an owl echoes, ancient, mournful, wise. It reminds you that endings are never truly endings, only transformations. Constantinople sleeps tonight, wrapped in moonlight and memory. Its story is not over. It is simply turning a page. You pause at the city's gate, your hand brushing the cold stone. The wind rises again, carrying whispers of tomorrow, of a dawn not yet written. And as you look toward the horizon, where the Ottoman fires flicker against the sky, you feel the quiet truth settle in your heart, that even in the fall of greatness, there lies the seed of renewal. The candlelight fades, the stars drift, and somewhere in the distance a new chapter begins to breathe. The morning arrives heavy with silence, the kind that comes before storms. You stand before the towering walls of Theodosius, their ancient stones glistening faintly with dew and dust. For 1,000 years they have stood, unbroken, guardians of a civilization that refused to yield. But this morning, they tremble beneath a new kind of thunder. The sound is unlike anything the world has ever known. A deep, relentless roar, the voice of cannons the Ottoman bombards echoing across land and sea. Each strike sends a shiver through the earth, through the walls, through your bones. It feels as though time itself is being struck, fracture by fracture, moment by moment. You close your eyes for a heartbeat. In the stillness between the blasts, you hear prayers rising, Latin, Greek, and whispered Arabic carried on the wind. This is not just a battle, it is the meeting of ages. And you, caught in the middle, can almost feel history leaning in to listen. Dawn breaks slowly through a haze of smoke. The city behind you stirs, bells tolling, voices chanting, footsteps hurrying through narrow streets. The defenders of Constantinople gather on the ramparts, their faces lit by flickering torches and the pale shimmer of faith. You see Emperor Constantine the Fiend once more, his armor burnished but worn, his eyes steady as he walks the line of soldiers. He says nothing at first. He does not need to. Every man who looks at him knows that this day will be remembered, not for victory, but for valor. Then softly he speaks. The city is in your hands and in God's. Stand firm and let history judge us kindly. The words hang in the air, carried away by the rising wind. Across the Golden Horn, the Ottoman camp stirs to life. Sultan Mehmed II, barely 21, watches from his command post, his gaze fixed on the ancient city that has haunted his dreams. Around him, the air hums with tension, the creak of siege towers, the rhythmic chants of janissaries, the low murmur of imams offering dawn prayers. He knows what this moment means. If the city falls, it will not simply be a conquest. It will be the end of an age. The walls of Rome, the pride of Byzantium, the barrier between worlds, all will yield to the weight of destiny. The first volley of the day erupts. The great cannon, cast from bronze and large enough to swallow a man, belches smoke and flame. The shot arcs across the field and smashes into the walls with a sound that shakes the heavens. The defenders cheer as dust settles. The stones hold for now. But in that rumbling echo, you can already sense the inevitable. Hours pass in chaos and fire. The air tastes of smoke, iron, and salt from the nearby sea. Arrows whistle overhead. The walls quake again and again as the cannons roar, their rhythm like a dark heartbeat. And yet the defenders fight on, monks beside soldiers, nobles beside peasants, all bound by the desperate grace of the doomed. In a small chapel near the walls, candles still burn. Women kneel before icons, whispering prayers through tears. "Lord, save the Queen of Cities," one murmurs, her voice trembling. Another adds softly, "or give us peace in its end." You move among them like a ghost, feeling both sorrow and serenity. It is as though the entire city has accepted its fate, yet refuses to die quietly. Then comes the breach. A section of the wall, already cracked from days of bombardment, gives way under the weight of cannon fire. The ground trembles. Dust rises in great clouds as stone collapses in thunderous waves. Through the smoke, the first wave of Ottoman soldiers surges forward, the Bashi bazooks, fierce and fearless. They are met with arrows, oil, and cries of defiance. The clash of steel against steel rings through the morning air. The battle becomes a storm. Men fall, rise, and fall again. The sea turns red beneath the shattered ships in the Horn. The sky itself seems to burn. And yet amidst the chaos, the emperor still fights. You see him at the center of the breach, sword in hand, cloak torn, his voice lost beneath the roar of war. He fights not as a ruler, but as a man defending his home. "Is there no one left to fight with me?" he cries, and then vanishes into the tide. No one sees him fall. But legend says he still walks beneath the earth, turned to marble by the angels, waiting to rise again when the city calls. When the dust settles, the banners change. The crescent replaces the cross upon the towers. The great gates open, not with triumph but with awe. For even the conquerors seem humbled by what they have taken. Sultan Mehmed enters the city on horseback, moving slowly through the broken streets. His face is unreadable, somewhere between sorrow and reverence. He dismounts before Hagia Sophia, its great dome still standing amidst ruin. He steps inside. Sunlight filters through shattered windows, casting a mosaic of gold and shadow across the marble floor. The air smells of smoke and incense, the remnants of the city's final prayers. The young sultan kneels, touches the ground, and whispers softly, "There is no God but God." Then, rising, he orders the church preserved, not destroyed. The icons are veiled, the altars cleared, but the walls remain. And in that moment, conquest becomes something quieter, an act of transformation rather than erasure. Outside, the city exhales. Its streets are silent now, filled only with the distant murmur of waves and the echo of footsteps on marble. You walk among the ruins, broken swords, scattered helmets, a child's doll lying forgotten in the dust. The air feels heavy, yet peaceful, as though the city itself is resting after a long, endless struggle. And as you look around, you realize, this is not just the end of Byzantium, it is the rebirth of a world. The crossroads of East and West have merged at last, not in peace, but in possibility. The new city that will rise from these ashes will bear a new name, Istanbul, and in its veins the blood of both empires will flow. The sun sets over the Bosphorus, painting the sky in crimson and gold. The cannons have fallen silent. The wind moves softly through the broken towers. You stand where the walls once stood unshaken, and you feel time itself shifting beneath your feet. The Empire of Rome has fallen. The age of the Ottomans has begun. And as the first call to prayer rises through the wounded air, it feels less like a victory, and more like a promise that even endings can be holy. Morning breaks over a city still cloaked in smoke. You stand at the edge of the Bosphorus, watching sunlight touch the domes and towers. Some broken, some still standing. The sea shimmers like glass, carrying the scent of salt and ash. Yesterday, this place was Constantinople. Today it breathes again under a new name, Istanbul. You walk slowly through its wounded streets. The air feels changed, not with fear, but with something quieter, deeper, almost sacred. The noise of war has faded. Now there is only the murmur of footsteps, the sound of rebuilding. Men carry stones to mend the walls. Women sweep the courtyards of dust and broken glass. Children run where soldiers once fell. The city is not dead. It is remembering how to live. In the distance, the great dome of Hagia Sophia glows in the rising sun. Its mosaics, dimmed by smoke, catch the first light and shimmer faintly, as though heaven itself refuses to forget. Inside, workers move carefully, lifting fallen icons, scrubbing soot from marble, mending the fractured tiles beneath their feet. The Sultan himself, Mehmed II, now called Fatih the Conqueror, walks among them. His gaze moves not with greed, but with reverence. He pauses beneath the dome, where the golden mosaic of Christ once shone brightest. For a moment he says nothing. Then softly he murmurs, "Let this house live." And so it does, not as a ruin, not as a trophy, but as a bridge between faiths. The cross is veiled, but the beauty remains. The walls that once echoed with hymns now tremble with the first call to prayer. The sound rises slowly, filling the air like a sigh. Not of conquest, but of continuity, as though the city itself is exhaling at last, after centuries of waiting. Outside, the streets begin to stir. Ottoman craftsmen arrive with their tools, carpenters, masons, and poets. Scholars from Persia, Egypt, and Anatolia walk side by side, their robes fluttering in the morning breeze. The empire's artists and thinkers are gathering, drawn by the promise of a city that stands between worlds. You follow them through winding alleys to the Grand Bazaar, still being rebuilt from rubble. The air there smells of sawdust and spice. Stalls rise like newborn stars, their awnings bright with silk, copper, and fruit. The sound of hammers and laughter fills the marketplace. A merchant from Damascus unwraps blue glass from Aleppo. A scribe from Bursa sets down his inkpot and begins to write a verse. From ashes we rise, and from silence song. Everywhere you look, life is returning, not hurriedly but gracefully, as if the city remembers its own rhythm. At the harbour, ships from distant lands begin to dock again. Venetian traders, once enemies, return cautiously, their sails trembling in the wind. They find not vengeance, but welcome. The new rulers of Istanbul understand something profound. A city's soul is not kept by force but by flow, of people, of stories, of exchange. And so the markets bloom once more. From the east come spices and silks, from the west glass and gold. Coins clink like music, and languages intertwine until no one remembers which word belongs to which tongue. You walk among them, feeling the pulse of the city grow stronger with each passing hour. The ruins of empire are slowly becoming the foundation of renewal. In the evening, the call to prayer rises again, the second since the city fell. You stand on a hill overlooking the Bosphorus. The sound drifts across the water, mingling with the cries of seagulls and the faint toll of distant bells that still echo from forgotten churches. It is a strange harmony, fragile, haunting, and beautiful. And you realize this is what rebirth sounds like. Below, torches flicker along the streets as night descends. The Ottomans light lanterns on every corner, not just for safety, but for symbolism. The Sultan has decreed that the city shall never again be dark. Where Byzantium's last night ended in shadows, Istanbul's first nights glow softly with light. You wander toward the Topkapi Palace, newly begun. It stands on the ruins of old imperial halls facing the sea, an elegant blend of east and west. Inside, architects sketch designs by candlelight. Artisans carve marble fountains that will murmur endlessly in the courtyards. Mehmed dreams aloud to his advisors. Let this city be the envy of the earth, where all faiths may find their place. The idea lingers in the air, a kind of promise to history itself. And as you walk through the unfinished gardens, you see it taking form, a city not of domination, but of dialogue. Churches are preserved, mosques are built, schools and libraries open their doors. The streets fill with the scent of jasmine, the laughter of apprentices, the turning of pages. The world begins to call it the city of the world's desire. And rightly so, for here in its rebirth, humanity finds reflection. At night you return to Hagia Sophia. The air inside is cool and still. Candles burn where incense once rose, and high above, the great dome glows faintly in the moonlight, its shape unbroken, its spirit intact. You sit beneath it, listening to the silence. It feels neither Christian nor Muslim, only sacred. The marble beneath your hand is warm, as though the city itself remembers your touch. You close your eyes and imagine all the voices that have filled this space. Priests, imams, emperors, sultans, all breathing the same air, all marveling at the same sky. It occurs to you that perhaps the truest kind of eternity lies not in one empire's rise or fall, but in the way beauty endures, adapting, surviving, never ceasing to inspire wonder. Outside, a soft rain begins to fall. Drops strike the rooftops and marble steps, washing away the last dust of war. Lanterns glow through the mist, turning the city into a dream of gold and silver. You watch as the rain slides down the stone faces of old statues, as if even they are being gently renewed. The city sighs, not in sorrow, but in relief. It knows it has survived. It has become something new, something eternal. And as you stand beneath the falling rain, you whisper to yourself, almost without meaning to, so this is how the world begins again. Far off, the muezzin's voice rises one final time before sleep, a song that carries through the mist across the sea and into memory. It echoes softly through the domes, through the ruins, through time itself. You close your eyes, letting it carry you into the dream of the next age, where art will rise higher, stone will bend to the will of genius, and the heavens themselves will seem to rest upon human hands. It began softly, with the sound of chisels and prayers, a rhythm steady as a heartbeat. You walk through the narrow lanes of Istanbul, the morning mist still clinging to the domes. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, a call to prayer drifts through the fog, long, low, and trembling with devotion. The city is quiet, yet alive in a different way now. The wounds of conquest have healed into marble and song. The Ottomans no longer look outward for victory. Their eyes turn upward, toward the sky, toward beauty, toward the divine. You follow the sound of stone meeting stone, and there he stands, an old man with hands of dust and light, Mimar Sinan. His eyes measure the horizon as though it were a line in a sacred text. Every arch, every dome, every ray of sunlight feels like part of a prayer he has been whispering his whole life. Sinan had once been a soldier, a builder of bridges for the army, but now he builds bridges between earth and heaven. Under Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire flourished like a tree whose roots reached into centuries past and whose branches brushed eternity. You watch him sketch upon the ground, lines like rivers of thought sweeping into perfect circles. He speaks softly, almost to himself. A dome must not sit upon the earth. It must hover, as if in breathless wonder at the God who made it. And you realize, this was not mere architecture, it was faith turned into form. Each mosque, each courtyard, each shadowed archway, a verse in the poem of a civilization that dreamed with open eyes. The workers move in silence. One carries marble from the islands of Marmara, another mixes plaster with rosewater to keep the dust calm. The smell of cedar and lime fills the air, warm, clean, sacred. You touch a pillar, smooth, cold, ancient, perhaps once part of a Roman ruin, now reborn into the bones of a new age. Every piece of the past, it seems, finds a second life here. Byzantine marble, Persian tiles, Arabic calligraphy. The city has learned to speak in many languages, but all of them now say the same word: peace. As days drift into years, the skyline blossoms with domes like silver moons. The Shehzade Mosque rises first, Sinan's humble declaration, then the Suleymaniye, his grand symphony in stone. From afar, it seems as if light itself built those walls. You climb the steps of the Suleymaniye. The wind hums softly through the minarets. Inside, you feel the hush of eternity. There is no gold, no excess, only harmony, as if the universe itself is suspended within those curving lines. You close your eyes, and you can almost hear the dome breathe. But what makes this moment eternal is not just the beauty. It is the silence between the notes. You sense what Sinan truly built was not walls, but space for the soul to rest. Each courtyard invites pause. Each shadow teaches patience. Each whisper of wind through the lattice reminds you that beauty does not shout, it prays. The Ottomans understood something that the world often forgets, that true strength is quiet, that empire, without grace, is just noise, and that to endure one must build not only cities but serenity. As you wander deeper into the heart of Istanbul, you find smaller mosques, jewels hidden between bazaars and alleys. Each carries a signature, a curve, a line, a light that feels like Sinan's silent hand still guiding them. Children run beneath courtyards, tiled in blue and turquoise. A merchant pauses mid-chant to gaze at the sunbeam striking a dome, perfectly centered, as though heaven itself kept time with the masons. Even the air seems changed. It carries not the scent of conquest, but of continuity, the perfume of civilization renewing itself quietly. One evening you stand on the Galata shore. Across the Golden Horn the city glows, minarets like candles floating upon the night. The wind carries the call to prayer again, weaving through the stars, echoing against the sea. And you think, this is not just a city anymore. It is a living verse, written by countless hands yet sung by one heart. Later, in the twilight of his years, Sinan stands before his final masterpiece, the Selimiye Mosque in Edirne. The sky above it seems to tremble with admiration. He is old now, but his eyes are young, filled with the same wonder that first guided his hands. He whispers not to the crowd but to the wind, "Now I have built a dome wide enough to hold my dreams." You feel that whisper settle within you, a soft promise that art, like faith, never dies. It only changes form, passing from hand to hand, from heart to heart. As the night deepens, you walk once more through the sleeping city. Beneath every dome, 1,000 prayers rise and fall like waves. The stones glow faintly, as if remembering the touch of their maker. You realize something beautiful, that heaven was never far above. It had always been here, waiting to be built upon the earth, and as you drift past the courtyards and quiet fountains, you hear a faint, melodic echo. The sound of chisels still tapping in some hidden workshop, the dream of stone still unfolding. Tomorrow, perhaps, another hand will continue it. For the sky is vast, and the song of beauty, endless. You smile softly and the city exhales. Above, the domes shimmer like lanterns upon the sea of night. And somewhere, beyond all knowing, the architects of heaven are still at work. What happens when even these perfect domes begin to tremble beneath time's tide, when the sea itself turns to mirror the rise and fall of empires? It begins with the whisper of wind against silk sails. The sea is still dark, a mirror waiting for dawn. You stand upon the deck of a ship gliding through the Aegean, the horizon unfolding like a secret only the waves can read. The world feels endless here. No walls, no cities, no domes, only motion. You sense that you have left the earth behind, sailing instead upon the quiet pulse of history itself. Below deck, sailors hum in a dozen tongues: Turkish, Arabic, Greek, Berber. Their voices mingle like threads in a single tapestry. This is the Empire's heart at sea, not in marble nor mosque, but in movement. Every sail, every compass, every whisper of prayer upon the waves is a testament to how far the Ottoman dream has spread. You walk among crates of spices, cinnamon, pepper, and frankincense, scents that tell stories older than war. Nearby, a scholar writes by lantern light, his ink trembling with each sway of the ship. He speaks softly, more to himself than to you. The sea remembers everything. It keeps no armies, only echoes. You lean over the rail and watch the reflection of the stars ripple across the water. For a moment it feels as if the heavens themselves are sailing beside you, twin constellations adrift in time. The Mediterranean was never just water. It was a stage where the old world met the new, where Venice and Istanbul, Alexandria and Tunis whispered to one another across the tides. The Ottomans called it Akdeniz, the White Sea. But tonight, under the moon's silver gaze, it feels more like a living mirror, showing not only the empire's strength but its soul. You pass the island of Rhodes, its cliffs crowned with fortresses once held by crusaders, now silent beneath the crescent flag. Further west lies Crete, where olive groves bend toward the wind like ancient worshippers. Each island carries layers of memory: Roman, Byzantine, Venetian, Ottoman, civilizations folded upon one another like waves upon waves. You realize then, empires are not erased. They are absorbed, softened by time, remade in the rhythm of the sea. By day, the decks are alive with color and sound. Merchants display silks dyed in saffron and indigo. A storyteller weaves tales of caravans and lost sultans, his words fluttering like gulls above the mast. You close your eyes and the ship becomes a world unto itself, a floating Istanbul, carrying the empire's pulse across oceans. At sunset, you watch the captain kneel in prayer at the bow. The light fades gently over his shoulders, painting his silhouette in gold, and as his voice blends with the tide, you feel the sea bow too, as if even the waves were praying. Night again. The ship glides through waters so calm that the stars below seem brighter than those above. You remember Sinan's domes, how they seem to hover in the air, weightless, eternal, and now you see them mirrored in the sea's reflection, as if heaven had fallen into water and learned to move. The sea has become a temple of its own. Its walls are wind and its roof the sky. And somewhere in the distance, unseen, the hum of distant ships carries the same silent devotion, an empire breathing through waves. But beneath the calm, there is change. The sea you glide upon has begun to shift. New powers stir across the horizon: Portuguese caravels, Spanish galleons, English frigates. You hear rumors whispered between sailors: the new world, gold, maps redrawn. The Ottoman ships still command the old waters, but the ocean beyond and the vast Atlantic no longer belongs to them. For the first time, the empire feels the pull of distance, the quiet tremor of a changing world. You watch as a gull drifts beside the ship, wings catching the pale light. It moves effortlessly, never fighting the wind, only dancing with it. And you wonder, is that how empires must learn to survive? Not by holding, but by harmonizing. The next morning you reach the port of Alexandria. The air smells of salt and jasmine. Here, the Mediterranean ends and the desert begins. In the markets, you see pilgrims bound for Mecca, traders from India, scholars debating in Arabic and Greek. It feels less like one empire and more like a constellation of worlds, held together by belief, by trade, by the poetry of coexistence. A Sufi poet sits by the harbor, sketching words into the sand. He looks up at you, smiling. Empires, he says, are like mirrors. The moment they stop reflecting, they begin to fade. The wind lifts his words away before you can reply. You watch them scatter, like the empire's future, fragile and beautiful, glimmering across the horizon. As you set sail once more, the sun sinks low, a burning coin on the edge of the sea. The waters turn gold, then crimson, then dark. You realize how much the sea resembles time itself, always moving, always erasing, always rebirthing. And as you drift into night, the silence deepens. The sails above you catch a slow, ghostly wind. In their soft rustle you hear an echo, faint, almost human. Even the sea must rest before it rises again. You close your eyes. The ship rocks gently, like a cradle between worlds, and as sleep begins to pull you under, you sense the Empire dreaming with you, dreaming of all it was, and all it might still be. Far behind you, Istanbul gleams faintly in memory, domes like moons above the dark horizon. Ahead, the sea stretches without end, vast and uncertain. You feel the tide change. The reflection ripples. And for a moment, you glimpse the truth that all empires eventually face, that no power endures forever, but beauty always finds a way to return. And as the last wave fades into silence, a new whisper rises, one not of conquest but of quiet twilight. For when the sea sleeps, even the crescent begins to dim. The light over Istanbul turns to honey, soft, golden, almost too tender to last. You stand at the edge of the Bosphorus, watching the sun sink slowly behind the domes, a sky of fire melting into water. The empire still breathes, but slower now, each sigh a whisper of what once was. And yet there is no sorrow in the air tonight, only stillness. The kind of stillness that follows a long and noble story, when the listener closes their eyes and simply remembers. The palaces along the water, Topkapı, Dolmabahce, glow like lanterns. Their walls have seen centuries of triumph, of music and mourning, of sultans who once ruled from Hungary to the Hijaz. Now their marble halls echo not with orders, but with footsteps, soft, measured, almost reverent. Inside, the air smells faintly of rosewater and dust. Silken curtains sway in the evening breeze, and the chandeliers shimmer like frozen rain. You walk through the corridors and feel the ghosts of empire move beside you, viziers deep in thought, poets reciting verses to forgotten queens, janissaries standing guard in eternal silence. The empire is fading, yes, but it fades beautifully. In the courtyard, a nightingale sings. You pause to listen. Its song feels like a memory trying not to vanish. You remember the sea, how it once carried the empire's reflection across the world. You remember Sinan's domes, the golden age of Suleiman, the voices that once rose in prayer over new-built mosques. Now, those voices are softer, but still they rise. Faith endures, even as power bows its head. In the heart of the city, near the shadow of Hagia Sophia, an old man sweeps the marble steps. He hums an Ottoman melody, one taught to him by his grandfather, a tune that once echoed in royal courts. You watch him move slowly, patiently, and you realize this is how empires truly end, not in fire or battle, but in the simple act of remembering. Time drifts like incense. In the distance, the call to prayer begins, long, mournful, and beautiful. It weaves through the city like a final blessing, touching stone, sea, and sky. You close your eyes and listen. It no longer sounds triumphant, it sounds eternal, as if it has learned that even decline can be holy. By the shores of the Golden Horn, the Sultan's ships rest in still water. Their sails are folded, their masts unmoving, yet even in silence they hold their grace. The empire has reached that sacred moment between day and night, between rule and remembrance. You feel the weight of history, not as burden, but as warmth. Because somewhere, deep within that twilight, beauty is still alive. In a garden behind Dolmabahce Palace, a young prince sits with a book. He is the last of his line, and though he knows what comes, the slow unraveling, the western winds, the letters of exile, he reads not with fear, but with peace. His voice carries softly through the evening air. Empires do not die. They sleep, and when they wake, they return as stories. You watch him close the book. For a long time, he just gazes at the horizon, the same horizon his ancestors once conquered. Now it belongs not to armies, but to dreams. The city itself seems to know what is happening. The fountains flow slower, the markets quiet earlier. Even the gulls circle lower above the Bosphorus, as if reluctant to leave the fading warmth. But in that hush, something miraculous appears. Acceptance. A sense that everything, the rise, the glory, the decline, was always meant to be. That even in fading there is purpose. You wander through the palace one last time, past rooms heavy with perfume and old maps, past a hall where a single candle flickers beside a forgotten throne. Its flame dances gently, not in defiance but in gratitude. You kneel and watch the wax melt slowly, and you think, perhaps the greatest strength is knowing when to yield with grace. Outside night has fallen. The Bosphorus glimmers like ink. Across the water, the minarets stand like shadows of memory, still tall, still serene. A poet sits nearby, scribbling under the moonlight. He writes not of war or conquest, but of quiet endurance. The crescent does not vanish when the sun departs. It merely waits for the stars to remind it who it is. You look up, and there it is, the moon thin and silver, resting above the domes, faint but unbroken. As you walk away, the wind from the sea carries a faint sound, music, laughter, perhaps a memory. You cannot tell if it is real or imagined. Maybe it's both, for history, like the wind, never truly stops moving. And in that whisper, the empire seems to speak one last time, not in command but in serenity. Remember me not for how I ruled, but for how I dreamed. You turn once more toward the sleeping city. The water glows softly under the moon. The domes shimmer faintly as if lit from within. Everything feels suspended, half in memory, half in eternity, and as your eyes close, you understand. The twilight of the crescent is not an ending. It is simply the world pausing between breaths. But as the night deepens, a new stillness descends. The empire sleeps, yet its soul stirs beneath the silence. For even in twilight, the story whispers, the echo of eternity remains. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't simply fall but flows like silk through the fingers of time. You walk through the sleeping heart of Istanbul, where the echoes of empires breathe beneath your feet. The air smells faintly of the sea, of salt and stone and candle wax, the same scents that have drifted here for 1,000 years. And as the wind sighs through the alleyways, it feels as though the city is whispering, not to be remembered but to be heard. Somewhere beyond the Bosphorus, a ship bell rings, soft, distant, like a memory calling from another life. You follow the sound through narrow streets lined with ancient stones, worn smooth by generations of footsteps. Each one of those steps once belonged to someone who dreamed, who prayed, who loved this place enough to build it again and again after every fall. The lantern light flickers on walls that still bear the faint patterns of Byzantine mosaics. Golden fragments of saints and emperors glimmer beneath layers of Ottoman paint, two worlds sharing one heartbeat. You pause to trace your fingers over them, feeling how time doesn't erase, it weaves. Every empire, every faith, every dream, stitched together in one great tapestry of memory. You keep walking, and the streets open to a vast courtyard. The domes rise before you, floating like moons over the sleeping city. Their curves catch the starlight, soft and endless, built not just to reach the heavens but to reflect them. Beneath those domes the ghosts of prayer still linger, some in Latin, some in Arabic, some in silence. And in that silence, you realize they were never that different. The wind shifts again, and you can almost hear it, the faint hum of the muezzin calling to dawn, layered over the echo of church bells that once rang from the same towers. It's a song without borders now, a melody shaped by centuries of both conquest and forgiveness. And for a moment, you stand there between two eternities, listening to how history learns to harmonize with itself. You wonder, is this what eternity sounds like? 1,000 voices, all saying the same thing in different tongues. As you drift onward, you pass the Grand Bazaar, closed now, yet alive with echoes. In the darkness, you can almost see them, merchants from Venice and Persia, from China and Damascus, their laughter carried on the hum of languages long vanished from the earth. The air still holds their presence, cinnamon, silk, and smoke. the perfume of a civilization that traded not just goods, but ideas. You imagine a young scholar once sitting by a lamp here, reading an Arabic translation of Plato. Perhaps he didn't know that centuries later, another scholar far away would rediscover that same text and call it the rebirth of knowledge. And maybe in some quiet way, the spirit of Byzantium would smile, knowing that its dream of wisdom never truly died. Now the wind grows softer. You find yourself standing before the Hagia Sophia, no longer just a monument, but a memory in stone. Its vast dome seems to float, as though held up by faith alone. You tilt your head and feel small as millions must have before you, emperors, sultans, travelers, wanderers like yourself. Each saw something different in its light, yet all were touched by the same silence beneath it. You step inside. The air is cool, perfumed faintly with incense and dust. Moonlight filters through high windows, painting silver rivers across the marble floor. You walk slowly, each step echoing softly as though the building itself is listening. And then you hear it, faint, almost imagined, the layered echoes of prayers through time. Byzantine choirs, Ottoman imams, whispers of pilgrims, sighs of kings. Different tongues, one longing, different faiths, one silence. For a heartbeat, you understand what they all sought, not power, not conquest, but meaning. A way to touch the eternal through the fragile beauty of the world. Outside, the first light of dawn begins to bloom. The horizon turns the color of rose and gold. The city stirs, faintly, tenderly, as though the centuries themselves are waking from a dream. You walk toward the sea where gulls cry and the waves speak their endless language of return. The Bosphorus gleams like a mirror, and in its reflection you see it all. Byzantium, Constantinople, Istanbul, 3 names, 1 soul. It hits you then. No empire truly dies. It only changes shape. The stones remain, the stories remain, the rhythm of life remains. And through all that remains we remain as carriers of the eternal echo. You pause at the edge of the water. The wind brushes your face like the hand of someone ancient and kind. You close your eyes, and in the rhythm of the tide you hear them again. The poets, the builders, the dreamers. Do not mourn what is gone, they whisper. We are not lost. We are the silence between your heartbeats, the breath between your words. We are memory, and memory never dies. You inhale slowly. It feels as if the whole city breathes with you, one last time. And for that single shimmering moment, the world feels infinite. The sun rises, and Istanbul glows, gold upon blue, ancient upon new. The call to prayer rises once more, soft as a lullaby. And as its final note fades into the morning, you realize that history has no ending, only transitions. Everything, every city, every story, every life, becomes part of something larger, something unseen but everlasting. The echo continues, moving through the hearts of all who listen. And now, dear traveler of time, that echo belongs to you. If these stories touched your heart, if you felt the sea, the silence, and the centuries whispering through your soul, then don't let the echo end here. Share your thoughts below. Tell which part of this journey stayed with you. Like this story, if you believe history is more than memory, it's emotion. Subscribe so that next time we open the gates of time, you'll walk with us again, through forgotten empires, through dreams that still breathe beneath the dust. Because this story was never about endings. It was always about continuity. And even now, as the last word fades, the echo still lingers, soft, eternal, infinite.